Welcome to FreightWaves Now, everybody. Hope you had a great weekend. I'm meteorologist Nick Austin, filling in today for Chad Prevost. He'll be back with us tomorrow as your regular host. We have weather to talk about. Not a lot of actual weather happening today, but ongoing flooding in the Midwest and how that could impact freight across the country. We're also going to be joined by Donny Gilbert, and he's going to be talking about national freight volumes, also the headhaul index. And we'll also talk a little more specifically about the Memphis market. He'll be joining us here in just a couple of minutes or so. First, let's go to the weather. We'll just go to the big map, show you what's happening today. We're seeing some heavy rain across parts of central and southern Florida. That could affect, at least slow down traffic on portions of I-75 and also the I-95 corridor. We do have a few other areas of snow and rain up in parts of North Dakota into Minnesota, right near the Canadian border, and in a few other spots across the Midwest and the Northeast. But that's nothing major. No major weather systems today moving across the country. Most areas are actually going to be pretty quiet. But the one area that's still dealing with flooding, the one region, because of heavy rain and snowmelt from around the middle of last week, ongoing flooding across Nebraska, including the Omaha area. Most of it is across eastern Nebraska into western Iowa, and also areas possibly downstream through the rest of the week into St. Louis and maybe even the Memphis area. So along the Mississippi and Missouri rivers, we're going to see this ongoing flooding. BNSF and Union Pacific have reported rail closures in these regions. So that means that potentially, as an alternative to getting that freight moving, it could end up on trucks, since it won't be able to get to a lot of places on the rails. And they're out there trying to repair and fix these problems. But we could see, as I mentioned, more flooding downstream through the week, so we'll be keeping an eye on that. So that's what's happening with the weather. Now we're going to go to Donny Gilbert, and he's going to talk about national freight volumes, some other things going on a national scale. And there's also some interesting things happening in the Memphis market. So we'll start with national volumes. What's happening there, Donny?
And welcome. Good afternoon. So this is our national tender volumes for the United States for today. Today we're at 9,929, and we're just below the 10,000 mark. 10,000 mark is where I'd like to be, just over. But as you can see, over the past few weeks, we've kind of floated around through just below the 10,000 mark. We hit the 10,000 mark at the end of the month. So heading forward, probably throughout the rest of this week and maybe part of next week, we're still going to be floating around the 10,000 mark, maybe a little bit down, maybe a little bit up. But as we get closer to the end of the month, it will pick up and hopefully break back above the 10,000 mark.
Is that because we're heading closer to spring when volumes cyclically go up?
It's going to pick up some with the spring, but also the end of the month surge again. Each time we get near the end of the month, we're going to see a slight peak in volumes as customers try to move that freight out and get it closed out before the end of the month.
Okay, kind of meeting quotas, so to speak.
Yes, sir. So here, our other line here is our rejection, and we're down to just below 7% at 6.65%.
That's this orangish line right here, correct?
That is the orange line. So we've come down and come down and come down, and we round the 7% mark, then we came down a little bit further, and now we're at 6.65. This is pretty much telling us there's not a lot of options right now for carriers in the U.S. market with an average so low. So carriers are going in and accepting everything shippers are giving them. So I wish this would turn up. It's kind of made some ups and downs. Hopefully as we get near the end of the month, it'll start picking up a little bit more. And as we get further along in spring, pick up a little bit further as we go into what's soon to be in May produce season.
Definitely something to watch.
Definitely something to watch. So my favorite maps in the world, I love these heat maps.
Yeah, the heat maps.
The heat maps.
They can tell you a lot. They really can.
Every morning I bring up a different heat map and go through several of them. This is our head haul index. This head haul index is going to tell you which markets have more inbound or outbound freight. So the ones in
one
blue,
versus the other.
One versus the other. It's basically your outbound freight minus your inbound. And that'll tell you if it's a head haul market, or if there's more inbound freight than outbound, that's going to be a backhaul market. So the blue markets are your head haul markets. Your red markets are the markets that are your backhaul markets. There's more inbound than outbound. So trucks are really going to be fighting over freight in the red markets. In the blue markets, shippers are going to be fighting for trucks. The white markets, this is where it's fairly balanced right now. So a lot of the U.S. is balanced on the inbound and outbound.
There is. There's a lot of white shading on this map here.
There's a lot of white shading. And then you see in some of your bigger markets, this is Memphis. This is Savannah, the port of Savannah down here. Getting up in the Chicago area, these markets are head haul markets. Harrisburg, PA, and New Jersey currently are building into a head haul market. And of course, the big markets over here, LA and Ontario.
LA has been dark blue for quite a while, hasn't it?
Dark blue for quite a while. So this is a good thing for carriers or brokers to bring up right off the bat to give them a quick view of what is going on in the markets. And there's head haul index, there's volume index, there's tender rejection for these maps, and a lot of these great maps to pull up first thing. My second favorite is once you look at this, you can also bring it over and bring it into a tree map. And
these things are fantastic.
These will tell you right off the bat which is the biggest market, and Los Angeles is the biggest head haul. This is also set for head haul. Los Angeles is the biggest head haul index in the nation. As we work down and to the right, they get smaller and smaller and smaller. On this particular map, you see it get really small right here and really small at the top. This is getting where we're breaking at the 0 point. Right. And we're going from head haul to backhaul markets. And we work down to backhaul markets getting larger and larger and larger. Stockton, California is our largest backhaul market at -131.
Lots coming in.
So this gives you a really good idea as well. You can see the movements. The percentage signs is the change from yesterday, so it's changed -0.30%. And a lot of information real quick on where you need to send your trucks or what's going on in the markets with these two maps.
It's just it's a cool and interesting broad view.
And it gives you quick information.
To look at compared to a map, you know. I mean, so a map can tell you
instead of having to dig, but these give you all the information right up front, right in front, real fast.
Very quick and convenient.
So speaking with our head haul index, let's look at Memphis. So Memphis is currently a head haul market. I brought up our outbound tender volumes. This is the outbound on the blue.
Okay.
And the green is the inbound.
Inbound volumes.
So we look at it, our outbound total volumes is 176, and our inbound is currently 97. So there is more outbound than inbound. Therefore, it is a head haul
market, right.
Our head haul index is listed here in the orange below. It shows a 79 for a head haul index. So this is quick information. When you dive into a market, you can see it on our tree maps, you can see it on our big maps, and you point, and I want to go to Memphis. We bring up Memphis, and this is what it's telling you.
Is there any particular reason right now why Memphis or some of those other markets we looked at on the tree map or the U.S. map are particularly head haul right now?
Well, we're starting into that spring season, so markets are going to start to pick up. A lot of your smaller rural markets are getting just a little bit bigger, and so as we get closer into spring, these markets are going to start to pick up as your spring merchandise starts to move, and that's going to be pretty close to right now.
So it is kind of a cyclical thing for certain markets that maybe tend to be more backhaul, that they are now becoming more head haul going into spring.
They're going to pick up, so they're going to, if they're, right now if they're slightly backhaul, they might start hitting the 0 mark or start drifting some into that head haul market. Okay. Your larger markets like Memphis is going to pick up, and this is going to stay a pretty good head haul market for a while. Memphis is tendently a pretty strong market year round. So we look at where do we want to send our trucks to if you're a carrier, and Memphis is normally a pretty good market to always send your trucks to. As a broker, you want to know where do carriers want to send your trucks.
Of course.
Because that is what you want to book your loads. So right now, if you're finding loads in the Southeast and the destination was Memphis and you see it as a broker, those are loads that you want to book because you know carriers seeing this kind of information are going to want to send their information, send their trucks to Memphis. So diving into Memphis, here's our Memphis volumes. Okay. As I said before, the Memphis volumes are 176. Our tender rejections in Memphis have dropped to 7.12%. Now that is a little bit over the national average.
But it's still pretty low.
But it's still pretty low, which means
so a lot of loads being accepted, right?
A lot of the loads that are, as it grows, are being accepted by the carriers. So looking at this as a broker, this is a good option saying that, whatever I'm sending to the carriers, they are accepting and the rates are not scaling up. But as this volume continues to grow, it will start to scale up. And let's break that down and look at the entire Memphis market.
Let's do it. Here we are.
First thing I always
We have a
look
lot
at
of
when
lines on this map.
I got a lot of lines. The very first thing I look at when we bring up the Memphis market is the tweener haul. That's the loads that are 450 miles to 800 miles.
Is that the blue line?
It's going to be the orange line.
The orange line, sorry.
Yes, it's nope, you're right. It's the green line. Tweener haul is 8.27%.
Okay.
So when it drops below 10% like that, that means carriers are accepting a lot of loads that are just being handed to them, because the tweener haul is not a good lane for truck utilization.
Okay.
So if they're accepting the tweener hauls, then they're willing to accept anything.
And remind me again, tweener haul is
Tweener
what
haul
distance?
Is 450 miles to 800 miles in length.
Okay.
So what normally took a one-day run can now take a day and a half or possibly 2 days. So you're wasting a lot of hours on the driver's hours of service.
Okay.
So that's why it kind of kills truck utilization. The most accepted is the long hauls. 2.15% rejection rate.
And that's 800 miles or more.
That's 800
right?
miles plus. That means pretty much any long haul load being given to a carrier in Memphis, they're accepting.
They're scooping them right up, are they?
Yes, they're going to the West Coast, they're going to the East Coast, because Memphis is kind of there almost in the middle, and getting good miles for their drivers. And in between is your mid-haul, and this is 10.99%. And your mid-hauls is the 250 miles to 450 miles. So this can get them, almost to Chicago, Kansas City, Atlanta, and the good mid-haul runs.
So most of the lengths, the rejections are really low. I mean, they're below 10%.
Yes, when the rejections are low 10%, and you see all that, it's kind of telling us that they don't have a lot of options to get freight out of Memphis. And volumes are picking up, we see that. And with the tender rejection staying low, it's keeping the rates down as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what does this mean for brokers?
For brokers, this means if you can get in there and get some outbound Memphis loads that are good lanes, that are going to LA, going to Dallas, going to Chicago, partially Kansas City, even Harrisburg, PA, you can get in and get those loads, and they're going to accept them. You're going to have to work with them on the rate if you're picking them up off the spot market, but they're going to accept your loads and move them.
Donny, thanks again so much. Excellent information. We hope that it's useful to all of you watching us today on this edition of FreightWaves Now. You can see us every weekday afternoon beginning at 4 p.m. on FreightWaves.com and our other social media sites. We really appreciate you joining us today, and we hope that we'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great day.